Hello friends and fam, enlightened beings, Hardcore Yogi here. So this video is called What is Yoga? More than just movement. So this video is essentially a very robust introduction and definition of yoga. Now you could define yoga in one sentence, perhaps. With many words you can define them in one sentence, but to get a really well-rounded understanding of a topic, you need to understand more than just one sentence. So that's my intention here. It is to give still a very concise, yet adequately robust understanding of what is yoga. So that's what we're going to speak about. Now when it comes to understanding what is yoga, there are two main approaches we could take to answering this question. The first one is to understand the history of yoga. The second one is to look at the actual practice of yoga. I think it is relevant to look at the history because when we look at the history, then we understand where we get bearings on where we have come from and then where we are going with this practice. Yet when we look at the practical action of what is yoga, then that's where the rubber meets the road. That's where the feet and hands meet the mat, so to speak. So we're going to look at each of these points. Starting with the history, the way that I wish to introduce the history of yoga is just by sequentially going through some of the most famous, prolific yogic texts. I will give a very brief overview of them. This is not extensive into these texts. It's just a very brief overview of what are the several key yogic texts, what are they generally about. This will help give us a good backdrop for the practice of yoga. Then after that we'll go into the more practical unpacking of what is yoga. So I think I have about 4 or 5 texts on this list. We'll see how it plays out. The first one is the Vedas. So this is the most ancient yogic texts, and in fact, being dated between 5 and 10,000 years ago, it may be some of the oldest knowledge known to man. So the Vedas are not so much an instructional piece on how to do yoga, but it's more a series of hymns which praise the divine. So the sages back then were able to really tap into higher consciousness, universal truths, really tap into the fabric of nature, and they just spoke about hymns and poetry and stories about what it is to be in touch with God. So yeah, I will share one little sample from this. It is the Gayatri Mantra from the Rig Veda. A simple 4 lines, but I found it very beautiful. And it goes like this. This is the English translation. Through the comings and goings and the balance of life, the essential nature illuminating existence is the adorable one. May all perceive through subtle intellect the brilliance of enlightenment. It's quite nice, isn't it? Okay, the next text is the Bhagavad Gita, written in about 200 BCE. So in this text, it's pretty much a dialogue between Pandava Prince Arjuna. So I always get his name slightly wrong at times, but Arjuna, and then his divinely inspired charioteer, Krishna. So they're speaking about this ethical dilemma because Prince Arjuna, he must go into war and battle against a neighboring township or village, which is the home of many of his best friends, his uncles, his cousins, etc. Yet he is a warrior general as well. So it's this moral dilemma of what he should do, how to go about this. So it's a back and forth conversation about this moral dilemma. But then what they come to is that Prince Ajura, he must in fact go into battle and fulfill his dharma as a warrior. So yes. And then the next text we will look at, the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. So written about 400 AD, the Yoga Sutras is essentially the first systematic yoga manual. It's the first set of how-to instructions on yoga. Patanjali also created the 8 limbs of yoga, which is still very prominent today. So the 8 limbs is like this sort of big picture blueprint of how to do yoga. And we will unpack that blueprint in this video. The last text we will look at is the Hatha Yoga Papridika. So written in the 15th century AD by Swamatarama, this book, it unpacks a range of different teachings which really relate to subtle energy systems in the body. So this is the first prolific text which spoke about chakras, the 7 energy centers in the center line, about nadis, the energy channels going all throughout the body. He spoke about bandhas, which is like body locks, locking certain muscle groups. Kriyas, which is certain hand and posture movements which align with certain energy channels. He also spoke about, Kundalini. He spoke about subtle and gross body connections, which is nadis. So yeah, he unpacked a range of these teachings relating to the subtle body, the subtle energy channels. That was the Hatha Yoga Pradipika. So that gives some background as to the texts which have influenced the yogic tradition. Now we're going to move into defining yoga. So our first question I want to look at is, how is yoga different to other religions and philosophies? Well, it shares multiple traits with other mainstream religions and philosophies. What it shares is the general intention to understand reality, God, the human condition, and the good life. But I would say what sets yoga apart from other schools of thought is the degree of pragmatism. Yoga is highly pragmatic. This is why it includes, a wide range of body movements, breathing techniques, mental meditative techniques, and even lifestyle recommendations. So yeah, yoga is extremely practical for this reason. So yeah, that is what I would say sets yoga apart. Okay, so a definition of yoga. It's coming into our definition now. So yoga comes from the Sanskrit word yog, which means to yoke, bind, or unite. The word union is often used in the context of yoga. B.K.S. Iyengar famously said in his classic book, Light on Yoga, that it is the unification of our physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual faculties with our personal will and the will of God. So yes, in other words, it is about bringing every element of us to move in one direction, aligned with our best interest and the best interest of the all. This is achieved through purification of the body, mind, and spirit. Now we move into the 8 limbs of yoga. As I said, the 8 limbs is like the essential blueprint for yoga, as outlined by the sage Patanjali. So yeah, it is a list or a set of practices which relate to lifestyle, physical movement, breath, and meditation. The goal is to remove all blockages, to help us reach our highest energy level so that we can be in alignment with nature and God. So let's look at the 8 limbs of yoga. The first one, we'll go look at the first two, which is yamas and niyamas. So yamas are ethical disciplines, niyamas are self-disciplines. And there's 5 of each. So the yamas, ethical disciplines, they include these 5. There is ahimsa, non-harming. Satya, truthfulness. Asteya, non-stealing. Aparagaha, non-possessiveness. Then brahmacharya, moderation. So just going over it again quickly in English, because I'm assuming most of us are English speakers. It is non-harming, non-lying or truthfulness, non-stealing, non-possessiveness, and moderation. Then the niyamas, self-disciplines. They include tapas, which is a fiery ambition to be our best selves. Then santosha, contentment. Then sacha, which is cleanliness, within and without. Then swadhyayana, which is self-study. And then isvara pranidhana, which is study or reflection on the divine. So going over it again, we have the fiery ambition to be our best selves, the zest for life, tempered by a contentment, always to have contentment in the end, to have cleanliness within and without, to have self-study, and to have study of the divine. That is the 5 niyamas, these self-disciplines. So that was the first 1 and 2, yamas and niyamas. Then we have the next 3 through to 8, which are all just 1 for 1, so it'll be easier. So 3 is asana, which is posture. 4 is pranayama, which is breath. 5 is pratyahara, which means turning the senses within. 6 is dharana, which is concentration on a single point or focus. And then dhyana is, number 7, dhyana is meditation or a sustained concentration and focus on a single point. And then finally number 8 is samadhi, when one becomes completely absorbed in one's meditation. It is a union, a merging. It is a oneness with nature. It is the foundation of mystical states. It is a sense of completeness, happiness, joy, and peace. To be in harmony with your environment, one with your environment, with nature itself. You then tap into natural intelligence, which really creates true peace and harmony. So yeah, that is the last limb of yoga, samadhi. Okay. Finishing off shortly, let us now encapsulate the 8 limbs of yoga, but in a paragraph, so to speak, instead of just bullet points. Let us begin. So imagine the yogi has been living an ethical life. He's been staying active, clean, disciplined, and well-studied. He then takes his seat for meditation. His posture is cross-legged with the spine erect, balanced and comfortable. That's posture. The energy is flowing freely. He closes his eyes and notices the breath, which is slow, deep, and energizing. It fills his pelvis and lifts his spine, raising the energy up through the head and beyond. His senses are turned within, as he maintains focus on the movement of breath and body. In this void of stillness, he introduces a mantra, Sat Nam, truth is my name. He repeats the mantra with sound and visual imagery, Sat Nam, truth is my name. He repeats the mantra with sound and imagery. He becomes absorbed in the meditation, until his personal problems disappear. He vanishes and becomes one with the object of meditation, in this case, Sat Nam. Later, he emerges with a deep inhale and an opening of the eyes. He is blissful, serene, centered, energized, and awake. His perception is so pure that he can sense the miracle of existence within and without him. He is being rather than doing. Awake, relaxed, and clear. This is the path of yoga. Thank you guys for listening. Just got a notification on my phone there, timesheet. But yeah, thank you for listening. I will also post this sort of video as a written article. In fact, the article is already written. It was taken from my book, Handbook of a Modern Yogi. So I will leave the link to the article. I will leave a link to my website and even to my crowdfunding campaign where you can pre-order a hard copy of my book, which is called Handbook of a Modern Yogi. So yeah, it's a crowdfunding campaign. You make a donation, then you will get the hard copy forwarded to you when it is fully produced and released. Okay guys, keep a lookout for more. Thank you so much for being a part of this collective journey of the souls. Much love. Namaste.